On this episode of Meet the Coaches, we're talking to Magus. I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, today on Meet the Coaches we have Magus. Magus, let's start this off with a little bit of an introduction.
Sure. I'm Magus. I've been coaching in GGBC for about 2 years now, primarily in the off-tank role. My main hero is Zarya. Uh, I've played competitive shooters since I was 13 or 14, and was top 500 in Overwatch for seasons 1 through 10. And once I stopped doing competing, I wanted to switch into some coaching.
Wonderful. What brought you to start coaching instead of competing?
So I had previously coached in the last game I played competitively, which was Team Fortress 2. But in Team Fortress 2, the community was very small and very young, so a lot of the coaching was done on an ad hoc basis. In Overwatch, I graduated from college and I didn't have quite as much time to stay at the tippy top level as it required to play competitively and in official matches anymore. So I wanted to use the time to benefit the community that had supported me so well.
Wonderful, yeah. I'm going through a similar thing right now. I'm also in college, and it takes a long time to play.
Yeah, it does.
It's a real time sink. So when you started coaching, what brought you to GGBC?
So when I started, my first foray into coaching in Overwatch was with GGBC, and I was browsing the competitive Overwatch subreddit around that time, maybe once a week, and I just happened to come across a top post on the subreddit one of those days, advertising the Discord, and I thought, oh, that seems a lot more convenient than the way I was used to coaching before. So I joined it and kind of, just stalked the Discord for a few days before I threw my name in the ring for coaching. So I'm very happy that I did.
Yeah, that's wonderful. If I remember correctly, that was around like 3 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite some time ago. I think I was probably one of the first group, like at least the first wave to come in. I remember there was like an application form to fill out to be a coach. So yeah, it
Yeah,
was
for
it was
sure.
quite a while ago.
For sure, yeah. Definitely probably one of those first batches. So you mentioned how Zarya was your favorite to coach. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, I just really liked playing Zarya. I think at one point around season like 11 or 12, when I started playing much more casually, I looked and I had like 3,000 recorded hours of Zarya in competitive. And if you remember back in the history of Overwatch, before season one, there was no like good way to do matchmaking with like for official scrims and matches. So everything was in custom games. So all those hours were not tracked on the hero. So basically, I have a lot of hours on Zarya, and I think I was able to just the amount of hours and time that I spent on Zarya just gave me such I feel like a mastery, not to boast or anything, but a mastery of her just second to second decision making, and having that like insight on what you should be doing every second, every time you have to make a decision in the game, just really, I don't know, it made coaching students so much easier because I could kind of point out areas where they weren't making a decision, right, when there was one to be had, and I think that level of mastery was great. Also, being able to flex with Zarya and block an enemy Rhine shatter with a well-timed bubble is pretty damn satisfying. So when you can help somebody do that, it's always well appreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you have every right to say mastery. I mean, you've been you said like 3,000 hours on Zarya. You've been top 500 for 10 seasons now. If that's not mastery, I'm not really sure what is.
That's true. That's
Um,
true.
so as a fellow Zarya coach, I always love talking to other Zarya coaches. When you are watching Zarya's, what is the most common issue you see?
Ooh. So I feel like it partially depends on the skill level of player that you're coaching, but I think that there usually is a similar vein to an issue that affects people of all skill levels. And the reason I would point this out is because it's something that even when I was top 500, I still struggled with like optimizing, and that is Zarya's energy, right? Like when are you comfortable being greedy? using your cooldowns to try to make your damage higher, and when do you need to use those abilities to cleanse or block or save your team from getting engaged on, or all of that type of stuff. There have been metas in the game where like it was very straightforward when like Ana and Reaper were in the competitive meta and like every team fight was a Beyblade.
Yeah.
You know that you're saving your Zarya bubble so that the Reaper can go in and just not get slapped, right? But in most of the times in the game, it is very much like making that decision of saying, okay, my team is not going to get engaged on in the next 5 to 6 seconds, so I'm okay building some energy here. I can be a little bit greedy. Those types of decisions, I think, are the root of people like have 100 energy and they watch their team die in front of them and they're like, well, this wasn't my fault. I have 100 energy. And that's a very easy issue to point out to people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think bubble management can be wrong in so many ways that
Mhm.
it's easy for students to not know the right way to do it, right?
Yeah.
It really, I think one of the most difficult parts I see is that students, um, it changes so fast
Mhm.
how you need to use your bubbles.
Yeah.
Like if you think that the fight won't start in the next 5 seconds versus if you do think the fight will start in the next 5 seconds, right?
Mhm.
Totally changes how you're supposed to play,
Yeah.
right? And like, are you winning the fight? Are you losing the fight?
Mhm.
Just is someone on your team planning to ult? What about their team?
Right.
And so because it changes so fast, so much, I think that's a really critical part of playing Zarya.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and so when I'm coaching, I try to break it down into kind of a pre-fight, mid-fight, post-fight. Hey, what are you focusing on this time?
Mhm.
But when you're coaching, how do you approach a session?
So I usually what I try to do is I try to actually watch an entire VOD or VODs from my students. So usually when somebody comes on, I'll say, "Hey, do you have the capability to send me a replay from your most recent win and your most recent loss?" I tend to feel like if you just give somebody kind of carte blanche, they'll sometimes send you a VOD which they or their team did extremely well, and you kind of are like, okay,
Yeah.
well, you guys rolled this whole fight. So getting a win and a loss, I think allows people to be more force them to be more honest about what they're sharing. So when I get those VODs, what I sort of do is I watch them all fresh the first time and I don't take any notes. And then what I'll do is I'll go back and kind of start to look at things that jogged my memory while I was watching the VODs the first time and take timestamped notes of saying like, hey, at this point, you decided to like, you know, bubble yourself and walk in front of the team while your team is getting ready to fight. Like, what were you thinking about here? And I try to use it as not like a prescription for what they should do, but try to understand why they're making the decisions that they're making. Because oftentimes you can get students to like walk themselves to the proper conclusion by just asking them a question that they didn't think about themselves. So I try not to be like too one size fits all and try to like lead them to their own answers.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's like that makes me so happy to hear because I think that that's just like like that's a really fundamental idea in like teaching in general. But B, like it's great because it just shows like it helps students learn,
Hmm. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Taking that process. So you've been coaching for a long time now, 3 years plus some change, I'm sure. What has been your number one favorite past experience?
Yeah, it's so hard of a it's such a hard question to answer. I feel like there are at this point there are dozens of students, and I know that there have been times that I've gotten messages from 10 students in a week, and it's like, hey guys, I can't possibly like take you all. I wish I could help you all, but I do know that like the students that I've spent time with, I feel like the best experience I have is that I haven't had a session where I walked away from a student thinking to myself, I didn't have good advice to give them. Right, I didn't have something that I could impart on them to try to make themselves better. And I've sort of, not to publicize this too much, but I've sort of stalked some of the people that I have coached, and I've seen like I think the overall trend of what I see is people, whether it's a steep curve or a gentle one, people seem to improve after they start interacting with coaches. Not just myself, but I think others as well. So that's sort of like the proof is in the pudding, right? The work that we're doing, there is some validation in there, and people are getting better because they're looking at the game a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done a couple like small, I don't even want to call them studies because they've been like, 20 or 25 students and looking at it. And I mean, it is seldom that students come in for coaching and don't improve
Yeah.
in the long run. Short term, it happens. Short term, it happens, right? But that's because it takes time to change bad habits. And when you're changing bad habits, you are worse for a little bit because you have to be very methodical about how you play. But in the long run, it is very rare that students don't improve.
Yeah, I
Which,
totally agree. I think that that's something that doesn't just apply to Overwatch. It applies to life skills and other games. You know, it's if you really spend time in the proper mindset to learn things, um, that's like the nature of improvement. You know, just
absolutely.
putting yourself in the right mind state.
Yeah. Um, well, Magus, this has been absolutely wonderful. I'm going to give you a chance here to do a shameless plug. Do you have anything to plug?
Sure. Well, I don't use social media all too often, but I do have a Twitter at Magus OW. That's MAGUSOW that you can follow me. I've got a clever Twitter handle called the Graviton Kid, which I was called once when I got several 6-man grabs in one game, so it sort of stuck. But yeah, a follow would be appreciated.
Wonderful. I'll make sure to put a link to that in the description if you're watching this video. Magus, it has been an honor and a pleasure having you on. I hope that you continue to have amazing coaching sessions.
Of course, thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely.